ACC teams are ready to make the jump to the Big 12. Finally, this is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. Today, we go through how the ACC is ready to make a jump to the Big 12. We will also talk with Spencer McLaughlin of Locked On College Football about how Josh Pate is alluding to trouble on the East Coast and Oklahoma State to win the Big 12. That's how we'll wrap up today. But first, there are schools in the Atlantic Coast Conference that are ready to leave that league and make their way to the Big 12. This should not shock you. I have mentioned for months now that this is the direction we are heading in. And while Clemson and Florida State were the ones who are at the very front of this, it is now clear that other schools are not going to sit around and wait. This comes from cryptic tweets from Josh Pate, who has alluded to trouble on the East Coast and the ACC. This has come from those like MHVER87 or that guy on Twitter or the various other sources who have usually put out things you go, even a Greg Pflugar has put out a lot of stuff recently about the nature of the ACC, the Big 12, where it's going to go. And Pflugar's been ahead of a whole lot of stuff. And I know most of his reporting came a while ago. If you piece it all together, you look around and you say, hey, wait a second. From the Josh Pate cryptic tweet to the guys who were on the forefront of this last summer, Louisville, Pitt, Miami, specifically North Carolina, they are not sitting around and waiting. And I think the question then becomes the timeline. You say, all right, look, fine, I concede. I'm a North Carolina State fan. I'm a Virginia Tech fan. I'm a Miami fan. I concede. I know we're going to play in a different conference and the ACC is not going to exist anymore because what I genuinely need you to do is, if you are a fan of the ACC, wrap your mind around the fact that it is likely, very likely, just not going to exist in 2 years the way it does, especially when the well-connected people of college football are saying that it's probably not going to exist in the next 2 years. And from there, it's the plan of where do you go next and why the timing and why now. As Clemson has viewed the ACC's future from a TV standpoint, as Florida State has sued the conference, as the Florida Attorney General has sued the conference, obviously things were shaky. And the only way to keep that together, what a lot of people said, was to harbor North Carolina. Well, the North Carolina legislature has recently made it to where North Carolina and North Carolina State have to play every year or every other year or have some sort of contract ensuring the two schools meet. And wait a second. They're in the same conference. Why would those two schools have to schedule each other every year from their state level within the same conference? I'm not saying anybody knows anything crazy, but there are already contingency plans in place because the tumultuous nature of the state of North Carolina. And I am telling you, anybody who's well connected in this conversation, who is well researched, is going to give it to you straight. If North Carolina is gone, that is the domino. That's the key domino that brings down the rest of the ACC. If they decide that they can no longer handle it and want to go to a different conference, that there are talks under the table with the Big Ten or the SEC, then that's it. That's it for the ACC. And there are pundits who want to tell you, and a lot of them are very smart people, that there's no way, due to collusion or possible fraud, that the ACC, any of their schools, are in talks with the Big Ten or the SEC. I don't know if I can buy that. I don't know if I can buy that Florida State and Clemson are going to sue without the idea that the SEC or the Big Ten are going to take them from the ACC. I don't know if I can get behind that. The amount of middlemen that have existed in college football and its vast history, from paying players like Cam Newton to today, or SMU in the death penalty era to today, there are people who are well connected enough to know where those two schools have their passions and interests lying. That said, now it's not just North Carolina, it's not just Clemson, it's not just Florida State. Everybody else looks around and goes, They're in Colorado mode. They're where Colorado was in the summer. They go, I kind of would like to survive. I don't want to become Washington State. And if I don't act now, I don't have a contingency plan now, this could be a legitimate problem. The ACC, because of the rocky ground they're on, because of the lack of money they get from ESPN and their TV deal, because of how they'll be impacted by the college football playoff look-in clause when Florida State and Clemson leave, and the college football playoff will give them less money, and because their best two teams are departing, and because North Carolina looks like it also wants to follow that trajectory, the league can no longer exist. And when that happens, the Big 12 benefits. Brett Yormark's a businessman. He doesn't care about North Carolina State playing every year. He doesn't care about Duke getting a square off against Wake Forest in an in-state bout. No. He cares about the growth of the Big 12. And that, my friends, is a good thing. Right here on Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Talent Solutions. I have a new intern named Zach. He is the one that makes all the tweets. If you see a good tweet from the Locked On Big 12 account, it's probably from Zach. He is a genius. When you're hiring for your small business, like I was, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can find anywhere else. You can't find them anywhere else. 70% of users on LinkedIn don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. They know the small businesses are wearing so many hats that it would help you give the resources to hire. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Keep in mind terms and conditions to apply. LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege for all your hiring needs.
God, no. We would never. Well, Josh Pate thinks moves are coming in the ACC, but what moves exactly?
You are Locked On College Football, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. That is Drake Tull of Locked On Big 12. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth. Realignment, coaching carousel, the portal, championship runs, everything and more. We've always got you covered. So Josh Pate sends out this cryptic tweet of sorts, Drake, and hints that moves are coming in the ACC. Tweeted out the water shaking as the T-Rex's feet hit the ground. Thump, thump, thump in Jurassic Park. And I'm always here for that sort of movie reference, so long as we recognize that Jeff Goldblum is the best thing to happen to that series for forever and always. But the question then becomes, what moves? And he had follow-up replies to indicate the ACC is not about to add teams. They're about to lose teams. And I would be surprised if that were Clemson or Florida State, which makes me think that other schools within the ACC could be plotting a move, at least according to Joshua, that would have them leave the ACC.
Yeah, I would say from the get-go here that if you're going to tweet something cryptic, that it's likely not that Florida State and Clemson are leaving the ACC. If Josh Pate's just now getting around on that, that would be very surprising.
He'd be a little late to the party.
As well connected as that guy is, I think that he's alluding to something else. And look, Spencer, we've dealt with for months now, 6-8 months, Kevin Smith from 24/8 saying that, I think that North Carolina is going to go to the Big Ten. And then you read the tweet and you think, oh, well, maybe. And this isn't Kevin Smith. This is Josh Pate. We all know Josh Pate. He is one of the most well-connected in the college football realm. And what's even crazier is Brett McMurphy or Ross Dellinger, they will report when a source brings something to them. When it comes to Josh Pate, he is typically the reactor. He's not the reporter. When his sources bring something, he doesn't go out and give you the breaking news. He reacts when somebody else does it. There's a place for that. I'm not knocking Josh Pate for that. But with this, when he breaks the mold of the typical way that he does his show, the way he does his media, there has to be something he knows that is enough for him to say, I am Josh Pate. People know who I am, and I am tweeting this not to be overly dramatic, but because I know something that is going to happen, and it is big in regards to the ACC. So I wouldn't say Josh Pate is this poppy clickbait. I don't think he's doing this to get more likes. He knows something that he may not be able to say yet, and he's alluding to the ACC not being in a very good spot.
Yeah, I like that take a lot, because the last time he did something of this nature with regards to realignment, it was last summer. The Pac-12 still existed, RIP, Sweet Prince, and he had said on his show, it looks like Colorado is going to the Big 12. And that was just a couple weeks before they announced that move. He didn't tie anybody else to it. He didn't speculate, well, Arizona's going with him or anything. He just said, looks like Colorado might be going to the Big 12. And then they were. So is Josh right 100% of the time? No. But is he right on realignment? Well, last time he tweeted something or said something kind of vague or cryptic or hidden messages or whatnot. He was correct, and I'm inclined to think that that move could very well be in the works. I just don't know what that move could be. You could be talking about what I think is the key to the ACC and keeping it together post FSU and Clemson, and that's North Carolina. Because if you keep North Carolina around, I think you keep NC State around, and you keep the state of North Carolina as a whole, in which you have 4, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4. Actually, yes, it is 4, or twice the number of championships that the Heatles won with their Big 3. You've got that many ACC schools in the state of North Carolina, which is why I think UNC, as kind of the flagship school, is the most important element for Jim Phillips to be able to keep unified or keep together, keep interested in the ACC somehow.
I wore my Penn State shirt actually today, Spencer. For those listening on anywhere you get your podcast, you can't see it, but I'll give it to you because Josh Pate actually tweeted, Penn State is at the corner of heart and head. Or brain, if you will. And I saw that tweet. It was like, oh, normal Josh Pate tweet. And the next one was the shaking water. So I thought I've got something appropriate for this. And to me, the entire Jim Phillips, ACC, to Josh Pate tweeting this right after his mundane Penn State tweet is just what we've seen in realignment. Is that 3 weeks ago, it is, hey, North Carolina might stay. And 6 weeks ago, it is, oh, will North Carolina go to the Big Ten? And 9 weeks ago, it's, is North Carolina tied to NC State? And then for me, a week ago, it was, wait a second, if North Carolina legislature is making sure that they play NC State, then that likely means that the two could have at some point a split. So it feels
or at the very least that they're preparing for that possibility. I don't think it's a guarantee, but I said when that move was announced with the other in-state schools, I'm like, well, why would they need to ensure that they're playing NC State or play these other schools? Because they are prepared for the very real possibility that somehow, some way, North Carolina could move without NC State. And if the Wolfpack just become available, then I have a hard time seeing the Big 12 not swooping in and trying to get them.
Right, and I think to me, Spencer, and this alludes to the fact that North Carolina has such a presence in the ACC. Again, there was a point 3 weeks ago and 12 weeks ago and 20 weeks ago where we thought, okay, the ACC might be all right because of North Carolina, but it varies tweet to tweet. It varies at this point week to week. And now with more of this and the more that I see real college football pundits posting about the ACC's demise, I get more worried for that conference. Now, from the host of the Locked On Big 12 standpoint, that is a good thing for us. If the Big 12 wants to stay alive and the look-in clause is going to affect this conference, you're going to have to add more valuable brands to the league. If that means the death of the ACC and the life of the Big 12, from my perspective, I enjoy hosting the podcast that I host. I'm going to be okay with that. From a general fan's perspective, this is another cog, and the destruction of the state of North Carolina and their influence on the ACC is another cog taken away in the machine that was the college football we knew and loved.
Could you imagine, I don't know why this thought popped in my head, but I'm running with it anyway.
Good.
Can you imagine if the equivalent of realignment took place, but at a governmental level for the United States? Like if North and South Carolina were thinking about a merger, or if South Carolina was considering renaming itself to South Kentucky because they feel like they're more affiliate, or if Oregon and Washington and California and Montana decide to make one big mega state to dominate the West Coast. Like, do you see how crazy that sounds? That's how crazy all this stuff sounds. And I'd like to make my stance on this matter very, very clear. This is the biggest story in college football. I take absolutely no joy in this being continually at the forefront of the college football world. I don't want the ACC to go away. And I understand why Florida State and Clemson feel like they have to get out. And if they get to the Big Ten, so be it. I would like, personally, for the ACC to stick together. And maybe I'm just too much of a sucker for regionality and such. But we'll end this subject on this, Drake. Does the Big 12 need to add more teams? Because I feel like they're in a very good, very stable spot right now. And I don't get the sense, perhaps I'm too disconnected from the Big 12. You of course know better. I don't get the sense that there's a big pressing need. Like, oh my gosh, if they don't get, NC State and Pitt or Louisville in this realignment, shift, then the Big 12 is going to be doomed. Like, I don't feel that way. I think the conference is pretty good as is.
Yeah, the Big 12 is not in a bad spot necessarily, but when you're playing catch up the way you are with the SEC and the Big 10, it's a matter of time before those two conferences become the decision makers here. They are the ones, the TV networks have the most.
I think we're already there.
Yeah, right. So how do you play catch up? I think it's probably too late. Then it becomes instead, how do you stay relevant in any way? And many would say the Big 12 can no longer be relevant because the prominence, the SEC and the Big 10. The way that Brett Yormark has to do it is that look-in that he specifically asked the College Football Playoff Committee for. What he is trying to do is make the league more valuable. I don't think where the Big 12 is with these 16, you can sit on these schools and just accrue, become more valuable, become more prominent. You're going to have a Louisville, who is number 23 in the EADA revenue numbers across the country the last 20 years. You're going to have to add maybe it's a Pitt, a dream scenario of a Miami, an NC State in there, where you begin to bring prominent members of the ACC on that make you more valuable from a school-to-school standpoint. The Big 12 is looking for that for sure.
I can only see Miami winding up in the Big 12 if all other options fail. I think they would try to go the SMU, Stanford, Cal route of like, hey, SEC or Big 10, give us an opportunity and we will be the cheapest possible option, but we have got to be in one of those two leagues. Coming up next, Drake and I are going to try something completely novel this time of year. We're going to talk about football and the team in Stillwater that just, wins every year. Is Oklahoma State actually able to win the Big 12? That's coming up next. First, let's talk eBay Motors here because we were just talking championships a moment ago. We will talk about that more. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash, which is really good. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. ebaymotors.com, eligible items only, exclusions do apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, Drake, let's do that hockey, but, football style. So Oklahoma State has been arguably the highest floor program in the Big 12 over the last 15 to 20 years. They're never bad. What's a bad season? They remind me of Utah a little bit, or heck, NC State with Dave Dorn. Never bad. Not always great. They flash up every now and then, but never bad, always good. And Mike Gundy, death, taxes, Kyle Whittingham, and Mike Gundy in college football. And they're, of course, in the same conference now. Can Oklahoma State win the Big 12 this year?
Yes. Can they win the Big 12? Yes. Can reasonably West Virginia win the Big 12? Yeah. There are 8 teams where you go, who I struggle to kind of reconcile with it, but it's possible. Now, I don't have Oklahoma State as the first, second, third best team in the conference. I think Utah, Kansas State fit in that mold better. However, we can't deny the fact that Oklahoma State has the best player in the conference, our All-American Earl Campbell, Doak Walker Award winner in Ollie Gordon. They have a 7th-year quarterback returning in Alan Bowman, who, to me, when he came from Michigan, I was like, oh, look, they got the Michigan assistant coach, Alan Bowman, who's 25 and is playing for Oklahoma. He's like Brandon Whedon level at this point.
By the way, that's going to pale in comparison to the 8th year of college football Cam Rising might get next year.
Correct. Very correct. And I think Cam Rising's a much better quarterback. But Alan Bowman still had that, just field general, I'm going to be safe and get it done. Reminded me of a Gary Bohannon at Baylor. You're like, the guy's not going to blow you away, but he's going to make the right plays at the right time. And he might lose to South Alabama 31-6 or whatever it was, but then take you to the Big 12 championship. For me, Oklahoma State returns I think it's 10 defensive players from the number 86 scoring defense in America. So that's what I struggle to reconcile, is their schedule to the amount of returners is certainly immense, but are they quality enough to make Oklahoma State a legitimate contender at the top of the league? If they win the Big 12, I won't be shocked. However, it's going to take a good bit for Oklahoma State to win the conference when your Kansas States are sitting around, your Utahs are as good as they are and have easy schedules, as we've talked about.
You know, I wonder what Oklahoma State's going to feel like. By the way, they have to play Utah and Kansas State in back-to-back weeks, and I mean, good luck. At least one of them's at home, but I mean, and
then you get West Virginia again. You're like, oh, that's still a tough game. It's just
that's not a great 3-game stretch. But then it softens: BYU, Baylor, Arizona State at TCU, Texas Tech, Colorado. Like once you get home,
Colorado on the road, like,
once you get through that stretch, here's what I wonder with Oklahoma State, legitimately. And though it doesn't directly pertain to the conference title hunt, it indirectly pertains. What is their non-conference slate going to look like? Because they're opening, for those who think Colorado is foolish to schedule North Dakota State, might I introduce you to the 2-time reigning national FCS champions, the Jackrabbits of South Dakota State, and they are going to roll into Stillwater on August 31st, feeling pretty good about themselves. It's funny you mentioned that South Alabama game from a season ago. Do you think, Drake, there is going to be a motivational component by the South Dakota State coaching staff with regards to what level of belief they will instill in their players as to what is possible to accomplish on that field? I have seen South Alabama win there. I have seen Central Michigan win there in dramatic fashion long ago in a galaxy far, far away.
They won.
I mean, they did win.
Remember the whole?
Oh yes. Oh no, I remember. I remember the play very, very well. But the fact that they were even in that position, I'm just saying. I'm just saying that's not the easiest of games. Then they play Arkansas. They go at Tulsa. I don't know that the Golden Hurricane will be a massive challenge there, as they will travel. It's like an hour and a half to the east or so. But if they don't go 3-0 in their non-conference slate, this is the indirect contribution that I was talking about with their non-conference games. Right. I think there is something to building a culture of belief throughout the season. Now, if they go 3-0, okay, they're in a good spot. Win one against Utah, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, bona fide conference contender. But if they drop that Arkansas game at home, or if they stumble against South Dakota State, I'm not saying they will, but the line is under 10 points, so crazier things have happened in college football. True. I just wonder how they go forward, because then you've got 2 losses on the schedule pretty early on, and that would take them, I think, out of the playoff hunt, barring a Big 12 championship. But what do you make of those first 5 games? I think it's really, really brutal.
Welcome to the Big 12, where if you're going to try to make sense of anything, we should just kind of throw it out the window. I look back to 2007, Michigan losing to Appalachian State, and I don't know if that's a direct comparison because South Dakota State is so good, and people know they're so good, but that derails Michigan's schedule. I go to Arkansas in 2012. They lost to Louisiana Monroe earlier in the season. It derails their schedule. I go to the Big 12 last year. We had teams lose to Ohio, Miami of Ohio, South Alabama, like not good. And for an Iowa State, they still finished in a pretty good spot in the conference, including a win against Kansas State. For Oklahoma State, they went to the Big 12 championship after getting beaten by 4 possessions against South Alabama. In almost every other scenario, it's objective. You agree. Like, right, you got to have a hot start to be able to contend. But for Oklahoma State, I could see them starting 2-2 or even 2-3 and still finishing 9-3. Because guess what? That's kind of what Mike Gundy does. He just kind of wins 9 games. You're like, oh, well, fire Mike Gundy.
The standard.
They're 2-3. And then you're like, oh, well, Mike Gundy won again. That is Mike Gundy. And he's got the Ollie Gordons to do it and a lot of defensive returners from a porous defense, an okay defense, that if they put it together, they're going to be okay. I think Oklahoma State is a 9-3, 8-4 team. And look, if 2 of those are non-conference losses, you're still talking about a squad that could appear in Arlington.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think you look at Ollie Gordon and you say, well, you feel good about the running back position, but I don't know if you noticed, Drake, passing is a big deal in college football nowadays.
I don't like Alan Bowman very much at all.
And look, Bowman, because here's the other thing I think about. What's the best I gave it away. What's the best quarterback conference in the country, Drake? It's the Big 12.
Somehow the Big 12.
Yes, but I mean, clearly, in my mind, for all those out there who think that I don't care for the Big 12, I mean, by any objective measure, this is the best quarterback conference in college football this year. Can you really come away and win it with Alan Bowman? Like, to me, it feels, you know what it feels like? It feels like Utah last year. Utah with Bryson Barnes, right? They somehow scrapped and clawed their way. They beat USC on the road with a late comeback, and they were off to that hot start. And then they played a real team in Oregon, and they got blasted on their home field, and they didn't score a touchdown.
Yeah.
And then things kind of fizzled out from there. They played a really good team on the road in Arizona. Yeah, they got blown out. That's what Oklahoma State feels like to me. Right, yeah. Great coach, a lot of consistency. But if you don't have the quarterback in this quarterback league, I think it's going to catch up to you.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked by that whatsoever. I just don't. And some Oklahoma State fans are out there going, well, Alan Bowman got us there last year. And yeah, I get it.
The league's better this year. The league is better this year. Let's call a spade a spade.
In the same way that Gary Bohannon, new backup quarterback of BYU, took Baylor to a Big 12 championship where Blake Shapen won them that game. There are years in which the Big 12, from a quarterback standpoint, can be dominated by Gary Bohannon and Blake Shapen. So that's the hope for Alan Bowman. I just don't know if from Shadur Sanders to Cam Rising, these new guys, Noah Fafita, that he can compete. He's worse than all three of those, and they are new quarterbacks in this league.
Yeah, and you have Jalen Daniels there in the mix. I struggle to see it. By the way, when I say the Big 12 is better this year, without Texas and Oklahoma, you get weaker. But like the lineup of quarterbacks, it's deeper.
It's deep, yeah.
It is incredibly, incredibly deep. That's Drake Toll, Locked On Big 12. You check him out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, of course. Drake, enjoy it as always.
Spencer, you look great.
Thank you. That's the kindest thing Drake will say.